Welcome to Africa Sun 5, FSM 5.
And why are we hosting these two conferences together? That's what we want to explain today. You know, when we host meetings with industries and innovators, they always ask, what are the policymakers? How can we make sure that policymakers are exposed to what we're doing so that we can make impact and interventions? When academia invents innovations, the next question they ask, what are the right policies? How are we going to make sure that policymakers can build the right environment so that we can achieve adoption at scale, right?
And when policymakers meet, they look for rigorous evidence that show that what we are going to do will have an impact on the beneficiary. They need those from pilot cases, from cases which have worked somewhere, so that they can learn from them and be confident that they can promote those solutions. When the policymakers, the city managers meet, they need those approaches that work. Yeah. And to be confident that they will bring some benefit to their people. This is why these conferences have been able to bring from the two worlds, policymakers from one side and those who generate solutions. Now, this is the best opportunity because we have a growing political will and growing industry to make something very great which will push forward the sanitation.
And you're right. It's only when we are able to learn from each other, build on our synergies, and learn from peers, peers to peers, network to network, that we can make big progress. And this platform, bringing FSM5, Africa Sun 5 together, is exactly what we want to offer.
Yeah, let us make sure that for days we know who is with us, who are our audiences, and who are the people we are communicating with. I know we come from different institutions, from different professional backgrounds, and we have different types of knowledge and expectations. But we are united by one thing, our goal. So let's make it easy, simple, and very passionate with those who are not experts in our areas, so that we can learn from one another and take home something which can change the world we are working.
When we work together, together like this, we learn from each other. And we become one team. When we become one team, we become unstoppable.
Good. Yeah. If each country implements what will come from the exchanges which will happen in this room, for sure, the sanitation industry will make faster progress.
Thank you. Now let's get started.
Let's get started.
Okay.
Yeah.
African Minister of Water and Sanitation, Honorable Minister Nkwinti, Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation of South Africa, Ms. Chwete, the Minister of Public Works, Housing and Water Resources of Mozambique, Minister Machetin, Minister of Water Affairs of Lesotho, Minister Samonyani, the Minister of Development of Energy, Hydraulics and Resources of the Southern African Republic, Minister Ahaba, the Deputy Minister of Health of Burundi, Dr. Nsangzegris, and the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, Kenya, Ms. Washeke, Executive Secretary of AMCAO, Dr. Kanengeri, the Chair of Pickle/Management Conference, Dr. Kone, members of the diplomatic corps, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed friends, good morning. My name is Mamu Cloding, and I'm from the Water Research of South Africa. I'm in the Division of International Cooperation and Partnerships, and I'm very honored to have been asked to direct the plenary sessions over the next 3 days for this joint Africa-SEN and FSM conference. And I just want to share a short story before I start with the program. One time in my life, it was about 3 years ago, when I went hiking with my friends and family. And we had a very good evening, of course, with lots of food and drinks. And the next morning when we decided to go for hiking, I discovered that I actually have food poisoning. I started being very embarrassed because where we were at that point, there was just no way I could get proper sanitation facility. All the people that I with were starting to see that I'm starting to lag behind. I'm a bit contemplating in my head, how am I gonna introduce this issue now? To tell the people to give me space because nature has called and so forth and so forth. But I finally had to break it because I couldn't hold it anymore. So I said, guys, please, I need some space. I have this challenge currently and I had to do what nature called me to do. Luckily, we had our water bottles, of course, and sanitation, sanitary soaps and so forth. So I did what I had to do. And when we got back to the camp, we were just reflecting and I was like, you know what? I felt like my dignity was ripped off. I mean, it's a natural thing to do, but I really felt like, what is happening through the minds of everybody who really doesn't have an option and have to go to the field to do what nature calls? Sanitation is dignity, and I believe that in Africa, we are able and globally to be able to provide everyone with access to sanitation and hygiene. So as they have mentioned in the plenary, the opening remarks, we all here, we have government, we have researchers, we have innovators, we have investors. So please, let's use these 3 days to engage, form partnerships so that we really give back dignity to the people that deserves to get the dignity. And going back to the program, we've changed it a bit. It's not like what you're having there with you, but we are going to have the Minister of Water and Sanitation of South Africa speaking last, as we'll be closing the plenary session. So that's the change that we're having now. And just coming back to this issue of sanitation and hygiene and access to drinking water and so forth, I think this is a very important gathering of everybody that has a way in which we contribute to this sanitation in the continent, and the first ever joint event, as we've just had, between the FMS and the Africa-SEN. So we are really happy that we are here and we all gathered here. So everybody who's gathered here, I'm assuming that we all want to see change. We all want to contribute in making people's life easy, in contributing to finding solutions for the continent. So please, let's use the time that we spend together to do exactly that. Sanitation, access to drinking water, hygiene has been a priority. It is a priority in all the African governments globally through the Sustainable Development Goals, whether it is the NGO commitment, which we'll hear about later. But however, it is just surprising that as much as we all agree that it is an important thing, it is a human right, we still are unable to achieve it, to achieve being able to provide sanitation for all the citizens that lives in Africa. And I'm hoping that as we moving along with the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, we will be able to achieve better than we did as Africans in the Millennium Development Goals, of course. It is a complex challenge because when you're looking at issues of sanitation, you're not just looking at sanitation, you're looking at other sectors. There's a lot of challenges such as climate change, the growing populations, migration to cities. So we all have to find a way in which we change the way we do things, we plan, we manage, so that we are still able to provide this necessary human right, even regardless of whatever challenges we are experiencing. And we of course know that sanitation, it affects education, it affects our girls, it affects gender, it affects water also. So it's really important that as we're looking for sanitation solutions, we look at in a systemic way so that we do not address the sanitation issue, but then we fail to contribute to other sectors as they are interlinked and so forth. So we are going to now go straight to our program. And our first speaker will be Dr. Kanengire, who is the Executive Secretary of AMCO. He is going to be reading for us a message or remarks from the AMCO President. The floor is yours, sir.
For water and sanitation in the Republic of South Africa, honorable ministers from AMCO member states, distinguished delegates from member states, development agencies, civil society, and the broader Africa Sun community, distinguished FSM experts and participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. I'm here today to read the speech of the President of AMCO, Honorable Norbert Emmanuel Tony Ondomba, Minister of Water, Energy and Mines, Republic of Gabon, who also asked me to convey his sincere regrets for not being able to be here with us today. On behalf of the African Ministers' Council on Water and the Africa Sun International Task Force, it is a great honor and pleasure to welcome you all to the joint 5th Africa Sun Conference on Sanitation and Hygiene and the 5th Fecal Sludge Management Conference here in Cape Town, South Africa. I wish to recognize the distinguished ministers and deputy ministers from AMCO member states present here. They are from the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Republic of Gabon, the Kingdom of Lesotho, the Republic of Madagascar, the Republic of Namibia, and the Republic of Somalia. You are welcome, honorable ministers. Ladies and gentlemen, the 5th Africa Sun Conference is a key milestone for a long journey that African countries embarked on almost 20 years ago to prioritize sanitation and hygiene in global and national development agendas. Indeed, the Africa Sun process can be traced from 2002, when the first Africa Sun Conference was held here in South Africa. Its biggest achievement was to successfully lobby the global development community through the UN, United Nations, to adopt a specific development target for sanitation, which was captured in the Millennium Development Goals. Since then, the Africa Sun process has developed into a continent-wide platform to generate political momentum for sanitation and hygiene. It also serves as a Pan-African forum for thought leaders and other diverse actors in the sanitation space to showcase best practices, exchange knowledge, and support problem-solving initiatives. I am proud to say that our own Africa Sun movement is a trendsetter and has inspired the birth of other regional sanitation conferences in Asia, East Asia and Pacific, and Latin America. Here in Africa, the Africa Sun process was the driver behind the Itequini Declaration and Africa Sun Plan of Action on Sanitation and Hygiene that was adopted by the African ministers at the second Africa Sun Conference in 2008. It also developed the agenda for the African Union Summit on Water and Sanitation held in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, the same year. In 2011, the third Africa Sun Conference in Kigali gave impetus to the launch of the UN 5-year drive for sustainable sanitation in Africa. And in 2015, the fourth Africa Sun Conference in Dakar concluded with a Ngo Declaration on Sanitation and Hygiene, in which African countries and partners committed to accelerate access to adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all and end open defecation in Africa by 2030. As we meet in this beautiful, clean city of Cape Town, in the 5th Africa Sun Conference, I wish to remind you that 60% of Africans have no access to basic sanitation. I also wish to remind this congregation that while open defecation is steadily declining in other world regions, it is rising in Africa, increasing from 204 million people practicing it in 2000 to more than 250 million people today, mostly in rural areas. Indeed, UNICEF and WHO have referred to poor sanitation and open defecation as Africa's greatest nightmare that kills more children every year than AIDS, malaria, and measles combined. Poor sanitation has also contributed to the spread of bacteria disease such as cholera, diarrhea, and polio infections. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this 5th Africa Sun Conference is transforming sanitation in Africa, accelerating progress towards the Ngo commitment. This theme builds on the tradition and successes of the previous conference and is aligned to the Sustainable Development Goal number 6.2. The 5th Africa Sun Conference, therefore, aims to take stock of the status of sanitation and hygiene initiatives in Africa and also review the progress by countries in implementing the Ngo vision and commitment. What is different about this conference is that Africa Sun is partnering with the 5th International Fecal Sludge Management Conference to deliver a unique, rich blend of political dialogues and knowledge exchanges. Specifically, the Africa Sun Conference will feature country and multi-sector dialogues, interactive technical sessions, exhibition fairs, and the AMCAO Africa Sun Award. I invite you to participate in the interactive dialogues and technical sessions offered by both Africa Sun 5 and FSM 5. I also invite you to join us at the AMCAO Africa Sun Awards event ceremony today afternoon during lunchtime at the ballroom, where we will be celebrating the outstanding efforts of individuals and institutions to improve access to adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all in Africa. At the awards event, we will also be honoring the late Pierce Cross, who passed on 2 years ago, but whose dedication and vision continues to inspire the African movement. Ladies and gentlemen, Many of you are aware that consequent to the 4th Africa Sun Conference, AMCA was mandated by the African Union to support member states to implement their commitment to address challenges facing the sanitation and hygiene sector. Indeed, AMCA was accorded official recognition under the Specialized Technical Committee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Water, and Environment. This is an important development to strengthen the link for partners such as development agencies, civil society, and private sector to forge closer relationships with government to improve access to sanitation. AMCA has since been working with multi-stakeholders to track and monitor the progress made by African countries towards achieving the Ngo commitment and SDGs on sanitation and hygiene. In this regard, I am pleased to formally announce the release today of an important knowledge contribution to the 5th Africa Sun Conference. The report by AMCA and partners is titled, "Is Africa on Track to Achieve the SDGs on Sanitation? A Review of Progress on the Ngo Declaration on Sanitation and Hygiene." This report provides a baseline to check against countries' progress toward the Ngo vision and commitment. More importantly, the report defines a clear message for Africa that more effort is needed to get on track to meet the SDG 6.2 target. Africa also needs to strengthen the enabling environment to ensure better delivery of sanitation and hygiene services. While the report indicates some progress in the area of leadership and coordination, more effort is needed to increase financing for the sector. There should also be increased focus on eliminating untreated waste and encouraging its productive reuse, which is an area with immense potential to create jobs and improvement of livelihood. I encourage you to get a copy of the report, which is now freely available for circulation during the conference and also online. Ladies and gentlemen, the conference format of Africa Sun 5 is designed to focus on consolidating multi-sector input through country and partner dialogue, as well as technical sessions. A key output from Africa Sun will be a multi-stakeholder declaration, which will feed into the ministerial dialogue on sanitation and hygiene planned for later this year. It is my hope that this conference will deliver a strong and declarative statement from stakeholders in sanitation and hygiene to increase investment and implement effective interventions, policies, programs, and partnerships in the sanitation and hygiene sector. On the policy and decision-making side, AMCA is working towards establishing a multi-sectoral platform that will include the water and sanitation sector ministers and their counterparts in charge of finance. It is my expectation that this conference will join us to call upon the African Union to organize another summit of heads of states and governments on water and sanitation. These high-level platforms will energize member states to recommit themselves towards accelerating progress towards achieving SDG 6 and other water and sanitation-related SDGs. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I wish to take this opportunity to thank the government of the Republic of South Africa for her hospitality and support, and the development partners, the wider Africa Sun fraternity, as well as all in-country teams and partners for their goodwill, financial, technical, and knowledge support to ensure the success of the Africa Sun 5 process. I trust that your participation at this conference will be both stimulating and rewarding. I thank you very much for your attention. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kanangire, and for the well-received message from the AMCAO president. I think we are noting the importance of the Africa Sun platform and the fact that it has given birth to many other such platforms in other regions in the world. Basing the theme of this conference on the Ngo commitment, I think it's very important that as we all gathered here and as we're also going to be going away after the conference, we try our best to provide support to the Africa Sun platform so that it is a success, because what Africa Sun is all about is really to making sure that provision for sanitation and hygiene is possible in the continent. So we really acknowledge that and thank you for the message from the AMCAO president. We are now going to be calling Dr. Kone on stage to come and give us some remarks. I think in his statement as he was speaking, as we started the program, he mentioned that researchers, innovators, and other stakeholders in the water or sanitation sector asked where are the government people to engage with such an important matter. And this conference, a joint effort of FMS and Africa Sun, is one of the platforms where we're trying to give you that opportunity to be able to engage with all stakeholders. So he's going to be telling us how best to utilize these 3 days, what is expectations from the organizers, because we really have these 3 days with all of us in one room, and we should use it effectively so that we achieve what we want to achieve, which is to provide sanitation and hygiene for the African continent. Dr. Kone.
Honorable ministers, dignitaries, member of parliament, head of delegation, Madam Kral, representing the German government, dear participants from Africa Sun, from FSM5, I am very grateful to be here today and to see all this smiling face showing up greatly this morning. It's very rewarding. I'm going to share with you how I believe we should intend to engage the next 3 days and make the best use of the time we're going to spend together. But before, let me thank again everyone who has been involved in setting up this event together. To organize a week like this, it takes a lot of effort. And I'd like to thank all the organizing committee, the task forces who put this program together. I'm here on behalf of the FSM5 Planning Committee to just deliver these measures which I built together with some of my colleagues. I also like to thank the government of South Africa, which is hosting, to reinforce what my friend Dr. Kaningire said. The government has been very grateful authorizing this event and providing a great hosting facility and also supporting this event for us. We are here in South Africa because it's one of the countries which is most innovative in sanitation. It's one of the great leaders in the world, not only on sanitation, but also in the water sector. Through programs like SAFE, I think you may know that the president has made sanitation for education one of the big priorities in the country. And the Department of Trade and Industries have also set up an initiative through the Industrial Policy Action Plan to build the off-grid sanitation industry in South Africa. So you will be hearing a lot about this later today. So, as you know, I don't know if this is coincidence, because you were sharing, and I knew I was part of the first Africa Sun conference committee planning and all that. It was here in South Africa, and there was a big declaration. I think a lot of you who took part of that are still here. But also, FSM one started in South Africa. Okay? And thanks to people like Mr. J, it's dark there so people cannot see you, but I think it's a name that is very familiar in this sector. He brought together some of the very courageous colleagues around the world to kick off the first FSM conferences. Since then, this community has grown, and today I'm standing here to share with you all that the conference series, which was started as a biennial conference put together by like-minded people, has grown significantly. So, yes, the FSM community, we are providing now a formal structure. We're moving from an organization of like-minded friends putting this together into a very formal structure, which we're calling the FSM Alliance. And thanks to partners like Borda, Stefan Reuter, who is here, the Alliance will be hosted now in Bremen at Borda, which is one of the founding members. So the key founding members of the Alliance are the Water Research Commission, Borda, of course, GIZ, who are all represented here, SANDEC, Susanna, University KwaZulu-Natal, the Gates Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they were joined recently by the University of Science and Technology in Sydney and Inclusive Sanitation Practices. This newly formed alliance will play its role in supporting the growth and development of the FSM sector and its contribution to inclusive urban sanitation services. Beyond convening and biennial FSM conferences, its plans to bring in more partners and members into the alliance and create a secretariat that will help achieve its vision, missions, and goals, and strategies toward FSM and citywide inclusive sanitation services. The Alliance will also improve FSM conferences. So we're sharing this every time, in every session. We want really to be innovative. So we want to have better conferences. We want to have better engagement with practitioners and also professionals in the sector. In order to best organize this community, we thought all of you might want to become a member. And we want you to be proud to identify yourself as an FSM champion. You should be proud of your job because you're all contributing in saving life and making the world a better place. So the business model for the Alliance is based on 5 key organizations who would be willing to contribute to the support of the operation of the Secretariat. And these are memberships which can be renewed every 2 years. On that note, I'd like to thank the German government, represented here by Daniela Kral and the Gates Foundation, who stood forward to actually provide the first support, or provide the first commitment to support the Alliance. In addition to sponsoring, of course, this event, which is bringing us together here. We hope to recruit 3 more strategic partners in the next 12 months. We are here today because we believe FSM solution will help extend equitable and sustainable citywide inclusive sanitation services to all. For this year's conference, and as we've done in the past, we have prioritized learning and exchange from peers. We have intentionally decided to promote the voice of operators, pit emptiers, innovators from industry and academia, cities, policymakers, and regulators. It is our expectation that the big players, many in the room, including media, the Development Bank, the UN organization, and the Gates Foundation, IWA, AFWA, will help amplifying the key messages and highlights from this conference. The FSM Alliance is a platform that promotes solutions and peer-to-peer learning, including skill challenges for operators and universities that we will be hosting at in the expo area. So you're welcome to visit that as well. It's very important that we take the time during this week to listen to each other and try to better understand what all the speakers from plenary session, from the thematic session, have to share. This partnership with AMCAO offers a unique opportunity, of course, to share with key decision makers here in Africa the solution we believe can be implemented now and help prevent several diseases and death. So if you are FSM delegate, please make sure that you talk to representative of the African policymakers. Similarly, if you are from Africa Sun, AMCAO, please use this unique opportunity to question the experience of the FSM community in presenting, in what they're presenting, and also learn from them. Most importantly, you may want to connect your own country stakeholders while you are here to this community. Now that we have a house at border, it would be very easy to find the FSM Alliance. It is obvious the sanitation is a complex issue, but at the same time, I'm also very proud and very inspired to see this community is very diverse, is rich in its collective experience. This is a unique strength that will help accelerating the change needed and the development of the sanitation industries. I am very optimistic, and why? I'll tell you a short story about that before concluding. On my ride here from the airport, I was lucky enough to ride along with a member of parliament and the president of a pit emptier from Burkina Faso. Parliament member and a pit emptier. It's like a dream coming true. I observed the dialogue among the two of them, and it was not like they knew each other because they were sitting in the same car. These are people who were working already together, and they plan to come together in this conference. And this is exactly what we want to promote here. The pit emptying community is one of the largest employers in our industry. And this year, and this is something we ignore, in every single community, you have network of entrepreneurs, and their job is to service the most vulnerable people and the poor. These are the people who live, in majority of the time, on non-sewer sanitation system. This Sunday, the MTS community came together in Cape Town to create, for the first time, a Pan-African organization emerging from the dark. It's a very strong signal to our world. It's a very strong signal to the policymakers, to the innovators, to the industries. The service providers and private companies are ready to take up the challenge. So, we have a week ahead of us. Please make sure that you get your mind open, get your heart open, and meet new people, not only your old friends. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kone. I think we have heard, those that are not yet members of the FSM family, we need to become members of the family because together we'll be able to fast-track finding solutions for sanitation and hygiene, and we'll be able to just cut on the duplication of effort that happens amongst all of us, while also building and strengthening partnerships working together towards this important mission. Germany has been for a very long period supporting Africa's economic development, including ensuring that everybody has a decent living environment. And that includes access to drinking water, but also sanitation and hygiene, as we're talking about it today here. And they have been mentioned already again as one of the supporters of the FSM conference. And today with us, we have Ms. Kroll, who is the Senior Policy Advisor for the Division of Water, Urban Development and Mobility in the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation of Germany. She is, however, going to be talking to us representing the German government, not only her ministry. And as we know that they've been providing a lot of development support, as I've mentioned, she will also be talking to us today about the new program that the German government will be launching or embarking on to help Africa to be water secure. So there is a new research program that she'll be sharing with us in addition to the development support that we've always received from Germany, so that we can know how we can not only strengthen the development part of the relationship with Germany and the continent, but also how we will now have an opportunity to also embark on research innovation through this program that she'll be talking to us about. Over to you, Ms. Cohen.
Thank you, Mama Claudine. I would like to welcome and absent Honorable Minister Quinty, Minister of Water and Sanitation of the Republic of South Africa. Honorable Ministers from AMCO member states, Dr. Kaningiri on behalf of the AMCO President, Dr. Cohen on behalf of the Fecal Sledge Management Committee for this conference, and at the same time on behalf of the Fecal Sledge Management Alliance, the new alliance he has just presented. Colleagues from the scientific and the practitioners community, Excellencies, all protocol observed, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, I'm honored to speak to you today at the opening of these two conferences, the African Sound 5 and the Fecal Sledge Management 5 conference. And I would like to thank explicitly the conveners of these two important conferences, the African Ministers' Council on Water, AMCO, and the Fecal Sludge Management Alliance, especially their respective partners for the hard work in preparing these conferences. And congratulations for bringing these two conferences together, so that the sanitation community is here in Cape Town and from all different levels. The conveners made a goal-oriented decision to combine these two conferences. The partners we have here in the room can create synergistic cooperation between politics, administration, science, and practitioners, which is vital for us to reach those people in greatest needs for sanitation services and solutions. But what does Germany bring to the table? First, in January 2017, the Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development unveiled a new Africa policy framework, the so-called Marshall Plan with Africa, a partnership that goes beyond traditional project-based development cooperation. For the German government, water and sanitation are preconditions for development and peace. As we congregate here this week, the President of the Federal Republic of Germany, President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, and the German Federal Minister for Education and Research, this is Ms. Anja Karliczek, are here in South Africa for bilateral talks with key South African counterparts. And one initiative Germany is going to prepare and to bring in the public is a new research program that focuses on water security in all African states, expected to start 2020 and expected to cover 10 years. It signifies our commitment towards sustainable partnership with Africa in line with the UNGOR commitments and, of course, the SDG 6 of the 2030 Agenda. The German water strategy for development cooperation highlights the interlinkages between other sectors, water and other sectors, as water and agriculture, water and energy, but also water and health and more. In this way, it supports German development cooperation in setting the agenda towards accelerating efforts to achieve SDG 6 and the UNGOR commitments. So we welcome the great progress made toward the UNGOR commitments and the newly set up Africa San Sanitation Policy Task Force, which will strengthen existing efforts by providing foundational and progressive policy and legal frameworks. Germany is and will continue to be a large donor in the water sector in Africa, with a focus on consistent inclusion of sanitation in the political and international discourse to bring the water state in connection to regional and the UN level. We always do this in close collaboration with you, our partners. What is clear to all of us is that the current financial resources are inadequate to achieve SDG 6. The World Bank estimates the annual capital costs of meeting SDG targets 6.1 and 6.2 alone as 114 billion per year, and this does not include other SDG 6 targets. So innovative financing mechanisms and economically viable facilities and systems are key factors that should be addressed to drive the sector forward. BMZ also sees a huge importance in improving monitoring systems and in creating stronger links between the global level and the countries to enable feedback from the global monitoring process to the national level and vice versa. So let me once again congratulate you for this event in this forum. I'm happy that my ministry, the Federal Ministry for Economic Development and Cooperation, a much too long name, can contribute to the important dialogue and exchange. And I would like to mention at the very end that our ministry has supported the Sustainable Sanitation Alliance, the Susanna platform, from the very beginning. And today, Susanna has more than 10,000 individual registered members. And we are convinced that Susanna is contributing to better cooperation in this sector. I'm happy that Susanna can also support this event by being its virtual home in the internet and assisting in its call for proposal and dissemination of the results. We welcome the continuous collaboration between the Fecal Sledge Management Alliance and the Susanna Alliance, also the Sustainable Sanitation Alliance. In the very end, I would like to say, let us keep in mind the shared responsibilities that we all have to not only achieve the NGO commitments and the SDG 6 indicators and goals, but also enrich the lives of those we are congregating here for. Thank you, and I wish you fruitful discussions and a very interesting meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kroll, and we do look forward to engaging with the new research program from the government of Germany, and we appreciate, of course, the support and the contribution of the German government in the Sustainable Sanitation Alliance. Then GO commitment is all about minimizing the inequality that we see with regards to access and use of sanitation and hygiene in the continent. There is a lot of improvement that we're seeing now with regards to the number of people that now have access to sanitation and hygiene in the continent. However, there's still a lot of work to do, of course, to make sure that we even provide or we open up access to many, many more citizens in the continent. There are also challenges that have been identified as they were doing the NGO commitment, such as resources, be it skilled human resources, infrastructure, and finances. And I guess that the AMCO Secretariat and the NGO commitment will try to really resolve those issues. There is a platform that AMCO Secretariat convenes for regional stakeholders task force workshop, where they bring together the African counterparts to try and track, share learn together with regards to are we really achieving what we have been committed to or declared we are going to be doing in the Ngo commitment. And today we have Mr. Bauer, who is also from the AMCAO Secretariat, who will be sharing with us what are the developments with regards to the continent achieving the Ngo commitment. Mr. Bauer.
Thank you very much. And good morning. I am here to present to you the outcomes of the monitoring of the Ngo commitments for sanitation and hygiene, which is the centerpiece of Africa San. And I want, before I continue, I'd like you to know that this report is compiled and organized, presented to you by the Africa San International Task Force, which is made up of key stakeholders within the Africa sanitation space. The Ngo commitments came out of Africa San 4 in Dakar. Ngo is actually a Wolof word that means dignity, and is also the name of the area where the conference was held in Dakar. And these commitments, a set of 10 commitments, were endorsed by African ministers in charge of sanitation in 2015, shortly before the SDGs. And these commitments drew lessons from the Tukwini commitments, which incidentally in 2008 were also endorsed by African ministers here in South Africa. The Africa San International Task Force was restructured in 2017 to make it more effective to support sanitation across the continent. And the subcommittee that was responsible for the monitoring and reporting is called the Subcommittee on Monitoring and Learning. And the subcommittee has a work plan that involves consultation with member states, validation process, and development of the Africa San commitments into indicators. And so we have 42 indicators in the Africa San commitments. Now, these indicators are staged. We have two stages, and then the vision. The stage 1 indicators, they monitor the enabling environment. The stage 2 indicators are different for different countries, and they focus on the country targets that are set by the countries. And then the vision indicators, which track access to safely managed sanitation, safely managed hygiene, and, and ending open defecation. This spider chart is the 10 commitment. And you can see that chart there gives you an overview of the performance of African countries. So the scoring of the commitments, the scoring of progress on the commitments is based on the traffic lights. So red, as you can see, it shows very bad progress or no progress at all. Yellow or amber shows some progress, and green shows good progress. But you will agree with me that Africa has made very little progress, because the amber and the yellow, they are everywhere, and the green is only a very small. So I give you the results from the monitoring that we did. Sorry. First, the good news. The good news is the greens that you see. There's very good progress that has been made on leadership and coordination. What does that mean? It means that increasingly across the continent, more countries have identified ministries that lead sanitation and hygiene. Key stakeholders within the countries come together, share and learn from one another to move the sanitation sector forward. Now the bad news. The bad news is that we have done very poorly on eliminating inequalities in access to sanitation. And what this means is that the poor and the neglected and the people who are down the lowest quintile, we have not really looked at how to provide access to sanitation for them. And that is commitment number one. The other thing we've done very badly in is also the issue of financing. In 2008, when Itiquini commitments were agreed upon, there was a commitment to allocate at least 0.5% of the GDP to sanitation. But at the end of, in 2015, very little progress was made in that regard. Now, in 2019, when this report was published, was compiled in 2018. In 2018, we still have not made any progress. So you can see that this, we've done very poorly. But worse still, on the issue of safely managing sanitation and encouraging its productive reuse, on that particular commitment, as you can see, there is not a dot of green. And that is why it is very important for us to have brought AfricaSan and FSM together so that learning from this, we can go back and see how we encourage productive reuse of sanitation across the continent. Now, let me present to you also the results of the country targets. But you can see that we did very poorly on the enabling environment. And the logic shows that we make good progress on the enabling environment, and then we make very good progress on the country targets. That way we can achieve the vision. But because very little progress has been made on the enabling environment, the country targets were nowhere. We expect that as we work towards improving the enabling environment, we'll be able to ensure that countries beginning to achieve the targets that they set for themselves. Now, the vision. The vision, like I mentioned earlier, is access to safely managed sanitation for all, access to safely managed hygiene for all, and ending open defecation. The situation is very poor. Less than half of the people in most African countries use at least basic sanitation. As you can see, in North Africa, there's good progress, but south of the Sahara, the situation is very poor. And open defecation is, of course, very, very high. Actually, 14 countries. People living predominantly in rural areas, more than half of the people living in rural areas in 14 countries practice open defecation. And this is the average for the continent. Hygiene. Hygiene, we are even far worse. We don't even have data in many countries. Only 37 countries have data on hygiene. Now, what do we need to do? I think we are on track on what we need to do. What we need to do is for all of us together to join hands together, to share and learn from one another, and strengthen the multi-stakeholder partnership that we need to ensure that everyone in Africa have access to safely managed sanitation and hygiene, and we eliminate open defecation. Thank you very much.
Very discouraging information we've just received from Mr. Bauer. I'm very discouraged indeed, because there are very good commitments that our leaders have committed to. And it is very sad to see that when it comes to implementation, we are not doing as well as we thought we would. 14 countries still having more than half of the population doing open defecation. That is unacceptable. Why are we not able to get an enabling environment when we have such brilliant minds in this room full of the auditorium? we should be able, as far as I'm concerned, to establish this enabling environment so that we reach our country targets. So I hope that we would really use these 3 days to come together to try and move this thing, because we cannot, like we did as Africans in the MDGs, not be able to really deliver on these beautiful commitments that we have made. So as sad as I am, I'm still having hope, and I know that we will make it, we'll be able to deliver on it. The next item, we're going to look at the solutions for this challenge that we're having, which we will need enabling environment, of course, to be able to achieve. So research and innovation is very key and important enabler for us to be able to move out of this situation that we're currently in, where we have commitments, but the countries are not doing well. We are not able to still provide sanitation and hygiene to all of the people staying in the African continent. And with the research, we would be able to have evidence-based information that could then be able to use for policy and decision-making in the continent. While with innovation, if we manage to create smart, sustainable innovations, which are the key word, affordable, for the African continent, we'll be really able to move this challenge and put it behind us. Because if we develop new solutions for the African continent, but for example, they are too expensive for the continent to afford, it will not be of use. So it's very important that as we gather together, try to find new solutions for this sanitation challenge in the continent, we also bear in mind that whatever solution we're coming with, it's for the poor. It's for the marginalized community, so it cannot be pitched at a very high amount. And for us to also win with regards to finding new solutions for sanitation, it will need us to change the way we think, the way we do things, the kind of partnerships we develop in the continent, because if we continue doing things the way we've been doing them, there is no way we will be able to find smart, sustainable, and affordable solutions for sanitation. And this also includes, because when we're doing innovation or innovative solutions for the marginalized or the poor communities, we have to also look at the issues of faith, the issues of religion, the issues of tradition. So as the innovators and the researchers are developing these solutions, it's very important that we work together with the other leaders in the community so that whatever solutions we're coming with, it will be acceptable by the people that we are trying to offer the solution to, and they'll be able to then take it up and use it. So the next speaker is going to be Mr. Naidu. This is the CEO of the Water Research Commission of South Africa, and he is going to be sharing his thoughts about what he thinks entails building the world's first sanitation unicorn. Mr. Naidu.
Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see all of you here. You have the unenviable task of listening to me this morning, because I have the unenviable task of presenting a message to you. Can you hear?
No, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me. Hello, can you hear me now? Yes? Are we good? No? Okay. Can the sound guys help me? Is this better? Okay, they've now restricted my hands. As I was saying, you have the unenviable task of listening to a nice message, but I've got to fill the space between now and when your real host gets here, that's Minister Googs. So if he's really quick, I'm going to have to do this really quickly. If it takes a while, you're going to hear me sing. And you. Now, the presentations this morning, I'm sure you agree, have been pretty phenomenal. And that dismal picture that Kitch presented actually sets up what I want to talk about. Because it's time that we started looking at this differently. So the title of my presentation is Creating the World's First Sanitation Unicorn. For those of you who know what it is, that's great. For those of you who don't, it's going to be explained in some detail just now. So let's walk through this. Just one thing, is it possible to get the slides on that side as well? Because I've been sitting down there and it's really hard to see. Oh, is it up above now? No, I'm up above. All right, if you can see it, that's fine. The first point that we have to make is that although there are difficulties in many parts of the world, and Africa is one of those places that there are indeed great difficulties, in general, our progress around sanitation in the world is reasonably good. The greens represent the improved sanitation and the shared sanitation, and the two varieties of browns talk about the unimproved and the open defecation. And as we can see, in every single region of the world, we are doing a little bit better. My slides are not up there. I am being actively sabotaged. Somebody clearly doesn't like this idea of a unicorn. I can now see some slides, but you can't see some slides. Is this South Africa being marginalized? Let me keep talking while the slides find their way. So the bottom line is, there is a measure of improvement. This improvement has come over a long period of time. So although there was no MDG on sanitation in the world, the work that we were doing around organizing for halving the number of people who didn't have access to safe water, inevitably in most places in the world, included some work on sanitation. Because in most places in the world, these go together as a couple. That if we organize to have better water infrastructure, we, as one of the benefits, as one of the knock-on effects, will also have sanitation. And the stories in different parts of the world are encouraging. In South Africa, for example, we went in 2002 from a 61% coverage of what is called safe sanitation into the space where we were sitting in 2017 at almost 82%. Now, 82% is quite far away from 100%, and there's no real justification why we don't have the other 18%, but you will agree that it is a phenomenal shift in a space where you also had increasing population growth. Yep. We now have slides, excellent. The only problem is those slides don't correspond with what I'm looking at. So, now it does. Thank you very much indeed. So as I was saying, this improvement is phenomenal in various places. I gave you the South African example, and some of you would have seen that in the Indian interim finance minister's budget speech a week and a half ago, he made this claim that in India, on the back of the Swachh Bharat program, he claimed, Minister Piyush Goyal, that 98% of the deficit had already been covered in India. That is quite remarkable. It is quite wow. You know, so even if the audits are saying that it's not quite 98% and it's 92%, I think we have to accept that the movement has been quite phenomenal. So let's move on to this. Although those movements have been great, as Kitch has pointed out, we still have to acknowledge the deficits. And the deficits are crucial. There is a deficit in the services, we know this. There's a deficit with regards to health, because the health burden associated with poor sanitation is absolutely enormous. There is a moral deficit, and there is a dignity deficit. Clearly, we need to do something about it. But the stuff that we don't talk about, and what I want to talk about today, is this bit. There is another deficit, and that deficit is about the lost business opportunity and the lost economic opportunity associated with sanitation. Because very few people around the world think of sanitation as a business and something that has revenue potential, that has investment potential, that has growth potential. Now, July was talking about this, and he was talking about the people who clear out the pits. Currently being the main practitioner base, clearly we need to go beyond this. How does this relate to the unicorns? Now, what is a unicorn? A unicorn is a startup that has organized itself in a very short space of time to have a market valuation of $1 billion US or more. This has become one of the new phenomena of our time. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, how many of these can there actually be? Well, here's the answer. The answer is, it's becoming quite a crowded space. So when we started off with this thing, with the likes of Facebook and Airbnb and Spotify, there were only a bunch of these around. Nowadays, if you move into the 2019 space, there are parts of the world where you're actually overwhelmed with the number of unicorns that there actually are in the space. Most of them are tech-based, without a doubt. But some of them are beyond the tech base and are doing extraordinarily interesting things in the world. That part wasn't me. But the thing that the innovators always talk about is, what is the failure rate associated with this? And this is one of those statistics using the US seed firms, seed tech firms. And the phenomena that we're looking at here is that out of every 1,000, you have the potential to get only 10. But 10 out of 1,000 is 1%. And in the domains that we currently play in, most of us, in the water and sanitation domain, 1% sounds pretty encouraging. If we have the chance, a 1% chance of actually creating a sanitation unicorn, this sounds like a pretty good bet. So is there a business case to this? Well, apart from us putting our minds together in rooms like this, in the corridors outside, in the coffee shops around this place, some other people are also talking about this matter really seriously. Now, I hope that you recognize the people in the picture. The other person is Bill Gates. The one that you knew first was President Ramaphosa. That is correct, right? Yes, okay. Well, when President Ramaphosa met Bill Gates at the UN, part of this discussion was had. Now, I don't know exactly what was said because these things don't get reported out. I'm assuming that what he said is, Mr. Gates, what we have in the South African environment right now is an incredibly promising opportunity. Because that's President Ramaphosa, on the 14th of August, launched the school sanitation program in South Africa. It's called SAFE. It's Sanitation Appropriate for Education. The reason it's called SAFE is because it's a really cool acronym. You have to agree, yes? And the idea is to organize for those 30,000 schools in this country that don't have adequate access to safe sanitation to be able to do so in a very short period of time. He would have then said, Mr. Gates, it goes beyond this, actually. Because what we're looking at in the schools program is not around organizing for ventilated pits to then be rolled out across all of these schools. Oh no, the statement was very clear when he launched it. He said, we're looking at the sanitation of tomorrow. We're looking at innovation. We're looking at the new way of doing things, because beyond the SDGs is the 10 billion initiative in 2050, when we're going to have 10 billion people on this earth, and all 10 billion of them need to have access to very safe sanitation in a different environment into the future. So he was saying that we're going to use the schools program to organize to introduce sanity into the system. Now, this is a little phrase that we coined in the WRC. Sanity stands for the Sanitation Transformation Initiative. It talks about the new sanitation, and essentially it's about introducing sanity so that we can get away from the madness of open defecation and all those terrible practices that we currently have in the world. And he said, when we move into the sanity space, we're talking about transforming a system. And transforming a system in a profound way towards the possibility of using sanitation as one of the pillars of a national industrial revolution. Now, isn't that a nice story? Can we do it? Because the promise is there. The possibility is there. It's about how we organize ourselves to get into that space. Now, you will be discussing through this week, and there are 1,300 of us here this week. That's those of us who are here legally and we have registered, so there may be a couple of others as well. But we're going to be sitting in all of these workshops talking about not only the nature of the challenge, not only about the problematique, but also about all of those things we are discovering with our increased investments in science, our increased investments in innovation, and we have big backups around the world. We have big organizations that are organizing to put funding into the space, technical support in the space, and the catalytic effect of the Reinvent the Toilet program from the Gates Foundation has actually been quite phenomenal. So you're going to be seeing applications like this, low flush systems that can organize for us to get to 1 to 2 liters a flush, combined systems that organize for us to no longer have the barrier of needing billions and billions of dollars in the world to lay out these 2-meter diameter pipes that you need for sewage to travel, to organize for waste to travel kilometers and kilometers to a very expensive wastewater treatment plant somewhere, all of which says you can't have decent sanitation. We now have the technological means to be able to have a set of new solutions that will see us in these next 11 years actually reach the SDGs. But we want to do more than that. We want to organize for this new sanitation not to be only for the people who currently don't have access to it. We want to organize for us to use this 20% to revolutionize what happens with the other 80% in the world, so that new sanitation in a low carbon economy is the future that we can have. So one of the things that we're looking at here very carefully is the whole notion of the circular approach to the water sector. Can water and sanitation organize itself as one of the pivots of the circular economy? The answer is obviously yes. It depends on whether or not you have an industrial economy approach. It depends on whether or not you have an industrial ecology approach. It depends on whether or not you're prepared to be actually revolutionary in your policy and decision making as well. Because you can see very easily that you can organize to have the servicing deficit happen not at a sunk cost anymore, because this is how we're now talking about it. The huge amounts of money required to organize for an extension of servicing to those people who don't currently have it. We should be talking about how can that sector actually make money, and we'll use this money to repair a whole lot of other things in our systems. So this whole notion around capitalizing on new science and technology and innovation has to be key. The whole notion around using the feedstock of waste of one process going into the raw material of the next process has to be key. There has to be a progressive waste minimization throughout the cycle and a declining carbon budget that is associated with it. And new sanitation is, in fact, one of the prime candidates around organizing for the circular economy. Because new sanitation insists that you have to have lower water use, and it insists that you have to have lower energy use. And it goes even beyond that. And some of the technologies that you're going to encounter are absolutely phenomenal. So the thing that you see on my right-hand side, probably yours as well, is something called the Aaron Loup. This is a South African invention. It works on a very simple principle. It says that we have a large amount of water that we need to move this waste. How do we get to a low amount of water? It looked at nature and said, how does water move in nature? Water does not move in nature as it does around your regular toilet, which is in a straight line. But in nature, water moves in a vortex. Because gravity and a thing called the Coriolis effect is at work all of the time. Can we mimic that? Well, we have done it. The net result is we're sitting with a toilet system that can flush like a regular toilet, but only with half a liter of water. So all of this is possible. And if we extend that paradigm a little bit further, we can see that you go from lower water use and lower energy use into a more productive space. And that productive space is energy production. Now, biogas is the traditional way in which we've been looking at this issue, and we have around the world, around this country, wonderful demonstrators capturing the biogas from our sanitation systems and actively using it inside those systems. We now have wastewater treatment plants in the world that are either energy zero, and some claim to be energy positive. And there are folk that are talking about wastewater treatment plants actually being energy plants of the future. So I hope as you're seeing this, you're seeing how the cents are becoming rands, and the rands are becoming thousands of rands, and the thousands of rands are becoming tens thousands of rands, and so forth and so on. Because all of this is entirely possible. So we can go a little bit further with this. Because waste, human waste, is a truly wonderful thing. So you and I sitting here are wonderful bioreactors. The stuff that we put in this morning is going to come out somewhere. And it's going to come out with a value add. Because we're not just going to put it out the way we got it in. We're going to be working on this because we are machines. Those machines are going to do certain extractions, certain conversions, certain transformations, such that the product that comes out of us potentially has a value that's higher than the stuff that went into us in the first place. Now, one of those things is chemicals. Now, we've been having the struvite discussion for years and years and years, and it is in practice in many places in the world, but it goes beyond that. Because depending on what you put in, you could get some very interesting things out. So one of the experiments that I did when I was a student all those many years ago, and the budgets were low, I had to be a guinea pig. We had to produce oxalates for a certain experiment to use on an HPLC. Couldn't buy it. The cheap version was buying a kilogram of chocolate, which I consumed and got sick over a 24-hour period, and then produced the oxalate. This is called abuse of postgraduate students. It is a grand tradition in academia, and I hope it never stops. But high-value chemicals and chemical extraction is a very real possibility around us. Now, there are some folk that go one step further and say that, well, why stop with that? Because the stuff has got a lot of lipids, and it's got a lot of protein. Surely our science is sufficiently sophisticated now that we can extract these. Well, yes, we can. And not only can we, we're already doing now. Some of you know this, that certain levels of protein extraction do happen in parts of the world, currently not used for human consumption. It's used for animal consumption. I don't know if you're eating those animals. I won't tell you where it's happening. You also know about the lipids. So one experiment that has become rather famous, there's a very famous brand of outerwear, sportswear that you use in extreme conditions, that currently is using the recycled lipids from human waste because it has superior characteristics as a preferential hydrophobic coating on certain brands of clothing. Now, if you've been to the Antarctic recently, you have probably used one of these. Now, I'm using a safe space because I suspect you haven't been to the Antarctic recently. I won't tell you where else you would have gotten it in case you get a little bit scared. The bottom line is, there is huge value in that waste. We now have the science and technological means to realize that value. The question is, are we prepared to make a business out of it? So, moving on a little bit further, there are folk that are working very hard on this problem. Now, one of those folk, I have to acknowledge him because I stole his slide, is Professor Karthik Chandran from Columbia University. He may well be here somewhere. And he and a whole group of scientists in a whole range of institutions around the world, including last year's winners of the Stockholm Water Prize, are applying themselves very actively to this problem. And if you go through all of those steps, the 6 steps that are described on the slide, in addition to what I showed you on the previous slide, you can see that this is where the billion-dollar revenue potential actually lies. So this is the challenge for us. We know the problems and we know them well. The question is, are we going to be sufficiently adventurous around the solutions that we need to see? And I hope that answer is starting to be yes. So, this is an obvious question. What if we build a whole industry around this, and then we no longer have the feedstock to feed the machine? I mean, this could be a real problem. I mean, we could create an economic dependency on poop and you can't find it anymore. But here's the story. At around 400 grams per person per day, I don't know if this is dry weight or dead. I should have. And we're about 7.25 billion currently, growing to around 10 billion by 2050. It says that we have 2.9 million metric tons a day. That sounds like a fair amount of raw material. So it sounds like we're not exactly in the most difficult space yet. If it comes to that crunch and we need to produce more rapidly, we know the ways to do that as well. I mean, we already consume far more than we need to. So we don't have a raw material problem either. So what we're saying in summary is that this new sanitation concept, the concept that we're gathered around to talk about from a policy level, from a practice level, from a science level, from an innovation level, from a user acceptability level, is in fact the very center of a giant cascade that has enormous possibility. And that possibility is summarized around the water use, it's around the energy use, and this is the water energy nexus that we're talking about. We can move further into the production of energy, into the production of high-value chemicals around proteins and lipids, and a whole range of other value adds that are a possibility. So the idea of a sanitation unicorn is actually not so far-fetched. The idea that we can create a global $1 billion a year industry around sanitation and sanitation products is not very far-fetched. It's an idea that is extremely real. And in the South African environment, we have made some provision for that. We have made the case to the Department of Trade and Industry. It's not always easy to make science cases to the Department of Trade and Industry, but we managed to. And they included, in a very important policy instrument, this concept. In the South African environment, the thing that governs our policy is something called the National Industry Policy Framework. And the National Industry Policy Framework has every year a publication called the IPAP, which is the implementation, the Industrial Policy Action Plan. That's what it stands for. It is the action plan supporting that policy. And in each year, it publishes a range of priorities for a 3-year period, a rolling set of priorities for a 3-year period, that the public instruments in the South African environment will help fund to make this move. And we have some fairly big public instruments, like the Public Investment Corporation and the IDC, which have a combined investment value close on 4 trillion rands a year. And the IPAP in 2017 included water and sanitation as one of its chapters, and it had a special mention around the sanitation potential. So, colleague, we can organize for this to happen in many different places in the world. We can organize for us to reconceptualize the way we're thinking about the funding around sanitation. We have the potential to reconceptualize how sanitation itself fits into a much broader rubric of what an industrial revolution can be around the world. And this is the direction in which we need to start thinking. Well, I don't want to get there quite there yet, so if I can go back one. I can't. So another conceptualization of this, the other direction, is this, the sanitation revolution that I'm talking about, that all of you talk about on a very regular basis, because we have many of these discussions together, does have at the short end the whole issue about the extension of servicing. It is paramount. We should not let 2030 go by and have a significant number of people in the world that still do not have access to safe and dignified sanitation. Because the human dignity factor and the health factors associated with it are enormous. And yes, every government in the world has this as part of its social compact. So we'll build a wall and we'll have toilets for everyone. Sorry. I take that back. The knock-on effect on health and hygiene is absolutely enormous. The biggest disease burdens in the world today are indeed disease burdens that do not belong to the 21st century. The 21st century should not be dealing with diarrhea as a major cause of morbidity and mortality. It's just wrong. So our ability to engage this, organize for a cost benefit in a range of other sectors. This in turn has a stimulus in another direction, and that stimulus is around organizing for a very new way to look at water. And if you're South African, this will be very attractive to you, a very new way of looking at energy. Because we have had a series of load shedding incidents, as we call it. Other people call it rolling blackouts in the last little while, which says that our electricity supply situation in this country is a little bit precarious. I'm not yet suggesting that we build a generator scale sanitation plant to produce this amount of electricity, but you can see that this could be a major relief inside the system. And the stuff that we should be talking about at national level in every one of our countries is that, how does this fit into our global competitiveness agenda? Does it have a place? Can it be a stimulus? Can it be a catalyst? And the answer has to be yes. Because one of the most amazing things in the world today is, although the sanitation enterprise is probably 100,000 years old, it has actually not been industrialized beyond the public service anywhere in the world. So those private sector folk that get into this space are going to be leaders in an unbelievable way. So that leaves the question that you already saw. And that question is, are you ready to take on the challenge? Because if you do, there's a horse with a horn that's just around the corner, and that horse with a horn is going to be worth $1 billion a year. Now, I'm assuming that some of you are going to take on this challenge. You're going to get into the space because the connectivity that both Dulai and Canisius have talked about is not only about the policy issues, it's not only about discussing the science, it's also about discussing the business possibilities. The only caveat that I have is you take at least 10% of your after-profit earnings and donate it to the furtherment of science. Colleagues, this is what I have to share with you this morning. And I can point out to you that much of what I said are sitting in reports in the WRC, which as a public institution will guarantee that you have access to free of charge, so long as you register on our website. We will be tracking you, so when you do make the $1 billion, I'll be one of those people knocking on your door saying that, you know, we need a couple of bucks for a center of excellence and a research chair, and I'm sure that you will remember this particular talk and be reminded that you need to express your generosity. So colleagues, best of luck with all the deliberations this week, and when Minister Nkwinti is summing up on the third day, let us give him the timetable as to when he can attend the launch of the first sanitation unicorn, and let's see if we can't make that happen in Africa. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed it is possible. And yes, we can do it. And I think we are ready to start doing it. As the CEO has mentioned, we've actually already started with either the conversations or working towards this unicorn that he spoke about. So while we're waiting for the minister, I'm trying to think, what can I do on stage to keep you still in here and not go, because minister is almost here but not yet here. And we thought that it will actually be interesting for you to see, if you're not an African, what Africans do when they are happy, when they are sad, when they are gathered together. For those that are Africans, of course, like me, you would know what I'm talking about. So we're going to have an item in Africa, okay, for non-Africans. In Africa, whether we are crying sad or we're happy, we always sing, we dance, we eat and drink. So that's what is going to happen right now on stage. And I will be now calling on stage the Ilungimisi dance group that will be giving us some entertainment as we're waiting for the Minister of Water Sanitation to arrive. Ilungimisi. very nice entertainment from our youngsters there. They're reminding me when I was their age. The next item was supposed to be the minister who is still on his way here. Before then, we do the last African way of doing things, which is eat, drink, and get to know each other better. So I'm thinking that while we're waiting, because our girls and boys were given the 3 minutes, 4 minutes time to perform, and they are not able to do more than that. Colleagues were asking for more from them. I'm thinking that maybe we should then open the floor, because we didn't have enough time to get you to engage with the people that were speaking, our speakers. Maybe we should then use this time while we're waiting for Minister to get a few reflections or questions to our speakers. I think there's only one speaker that's not there, Mr. Naidu, and I'll try to get hold of him. But if I can just get assistance with a roving mic, so that we can open the floor for some reflections or questions if you have to the panel. And please, 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 I'm asking you to not leave, because the minister is on his way, and we will appreciate if you could be here when he arrives. So there are mics there. If you can just show us with just waving your hand as high as possible to get questions either to the speakers or just your contribution to the kind of discussions we've been having on the floor this morning. Thank you. Yeah. They're saying the lights. We can't see people. Can we have the lights just to identify the hands as people will be raising their hands? I'm really trying to still keep us in here. Okay, the lights are on. If you can just show us with the hands up to, if you want to say something or ask questions to all the speakers that were talking to us this morning. Okay, maybe I shall give a performance myself and do some dancing while we're waiting for the minister. If you can just kindly, okay, there is a hand there. That's the first hand. There's Katik. There, in the center. Where's the mic? Another hand, please. More hands, more hands. Okay, one for now, and the mic is coming. There she is.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, please go ahead if you have the mic. I really struggle to see due to the light.
Good morning, Cape Town.
Morning.
I'm Baka Windy Shaka from the Pearl of Africa, Uganda, the Secretary General of Pan-African Sanitation Actors Association. My question is regarding to Ngo Declaration. It's all about policy. The last presenter has given us opportunity from the private sector in order to render sanitation services even to informal settlements. Now, the challenge is Africa has weak private sector, and a lot of investment has been put in policy regulations and the like. How is this delegation gonna help the private sector in order to effect a sanitation citywide inclusiveness? Thank you very much.
Okay, I think there was another hand over here. We'll just take maybe 3 hands. Yeah, 2 hands next to each other. Yeah. Take 3 hands and then we'll try to respond.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ferdos Motakin, and I'm representing Mobile Operators Global Association called GSMA. It has nothing to do with sanitation and fecal/related activities. The reason why we're here is to understand how the mobile industry globally and the communication sector globally can actually participate and contribute to the objective that you are having. We wanted to share and learn from you, and we also wanted to understand how overall the communication sector can actually add value to yourself. So I would be here the next 3 days, and if anyone of you have any thoughts, would be delighted to hear from you, and I would be also delighted to share our overall expectation toward this particular sector so that we jointly can add value and make some progress out of it. Thank you so much. It's just a comment.
Thank you very much. Another hand, then we'll give the AMCO to respond on the Ngo question. Yes, we're going to the next hand.
Yeah, good morning. It's Johnny Harris from Isadima. I'm the inventor of the Aaron Loup, and just wanted to thank Dish again for the pitch, but just want to correct one aspect of his optimism. So we are flushing on about 1.2 litres, and if it's used as a pour flush, then you're looking at about 0.75 to 1. So I don't want to raise people's expectations. We are trying to develop the toilet so that when you urinate, it automatically flushes, but that's the future. Okay. The last one was a joke.
Thank you very much. And we will then ask the colleagues from AMCO to come and respond to the first question on the Ngo commitment. Yeah, no. You don't have a mic?
Hello. The mic does not work. Hello. Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you, that gentleman who raised the question about the involvement of the private sector.
I really don't know what
I believe the Ngo commitment number 6, I believe, talks about how governments need to effectively engage the private sector and encourage their participation in the sanitation space in Africa. And if you have time, you look at the report, you will see how the indicators have been disaggregated such that countries are reporting on how they have like a policy or strategy for actively engaging the private sector into sanitation. So rest assured, when you go back to your country, you can step up to the government and approach them and draw their attention to the Ngo commitments that talks about the engagement of the private sector. They sign up to it, so they owe you a responsibility to create the enabling environment that will help you to effectively participate in sanitation service delivery.
Thank you very much for responding, Kitch. Do we still have some more hands? Here, and another one. I see only one more hand.
Good morning. I think this is Dr. Mahabub from ICD-DRB Bangladesh. This is a great start. I like the African traditional dance as well as the presentation that made by Naidu. It's really amazing. If I say that the government of Bangladesh did a lot for the sanitation program, and we have access to sanitation for all the people in Bangladesh, and the government declared that we have 0 open defecation. However, with all of this, still a lot to do for sanitation, because government is has not that much resources that can only contribute for improving the sanitation system and sanitation situation. We need a lot to work on this. We need to generate the evidence that has impact of improving the sanitation. We have less investment in this area. At the same time, if we see in the globe, in the developed countries, a lot of the things contributed by the private sector, as mentioned. So private sector also should come forward and putting the effort for the business, for the development, for the innovation of the technologies, because we see a very few innovation and technologies in this sanitation sector. So I think that the development partners, donors, and the governments here in this conference, so that how we can improve for developing the technologies, for improving the sanitation. Not only that, focusing on low-cost interventions, but also investing for the quality intervention that improve the life of the people as well as the cost will automatically come to a less or small amount. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we thank you for the comment. There's a gentleman there. And up there.
Thank you all. I am also from Bangladesh. My name is Polash Kontibala. I am also Chief Executive Officer of Khulna City Corporation. And my question is on to Mr. Naidu. I am also impressed on on his delivery. From my side, I would like to ask Mr. Naidu that he has expressed a very big amount of possibility or probability in the case of energy and power. But my question is from the great philosopher Aristotle, who said everything will be constructive if we get 4 answers by putting 4 causes. That is the elemental cause, efficient cause, formal cause, and final cause. Mr. Naidu has put something, the amount of sludge and the possibility, but he hasn't clearly defined the 4 other causes. So I should ask him, elemental, efficient, formal, and final cause of his delivery. If we don't put some basic indicator in the case of his delivery, then how can we achieve it for the betterment of our world? So this is my question. That is elemental cause, efficient cause, formal cause, and final cause. Thank you.
Did you get that, Jay? Okay, Mr. Naidu has just stepped out, but we have Mr. Bagwan, who's also from the Water Research Commission. Actually, he's our executive manager leading the portfolio of sanitation, and he will try to respond to that. As we take the mic up there was a hand up there. And
so is it working? I think just to respond, I'm giving a presentation later on that puts into context what my CEO was talking about, a new industry. We need to recognize that sanitation has always been in the public service. If you want to break, it's a slow poison you have to give to move it into an industrial space, okay? Because markets only get driven in an industrial space, not in a public space. In the public space, it's all about voting, it's about the kind of political sensation, etc.
Is she ready?
So this is the message behind this talk, that if you want to build a genuine sanitation industry, you have to move it out of the public space. Okay, it's very hard to swallow, and that's the message he's trying to get through to, that this is the direction we should be taking. But we can talk a little earlier.
So, can I? Yes.
Okay.
Robert Chambers from the Institute of Development Studies at University of Sussex, UK. There's something that I find missing so far in the presentations which we've had and in the setting of the tone for this conference. I'm sorry, but I'm an angry old man. There are large areas, very large areas, and whole countries in which the density of open defecation in rural areas is increasing. It has been increasing, and it's going on increasing, and the exposure of children and others to fecally transmitted infections is likely to be going up. Isn't this something that should be treated as a crisis? I haven't heard the word crisis used. Emergency, that it needs a new approach. It needs something radically new, radical campaigns of a sort which require a lot of rethinking. So can we have some passion and some anger and some ideas about radical change, particularly in rural areas and in peri-urban areas where there's a looming crisis? Thank you.
then, please, the mic people, can you just help to locate the hands for me? I see 3 more hands after this one. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm Salfiso Kitabo from water.org. I'm very happy to be here and talking on the solutions. I really appreciate what the participant at last minute said. Yes, we are in crisis. The crisis is killing a child every 2 minutes. Therefore, it is really crisis. Therefore, our recommendation as water.org is let's bring in microfinance institutions to make this sector a business. Let's make it bankable. There won't be enough public funding as well as charity money to solve this crisis. The only remedy, of course not the only one, but the major remedy could come from microfinances and making banks to get involved, give loans not to groups only, but individuals. If we are doing that, we can solve the problem. And we should all be reminded that the SGD is only 11 years away. And we are talking about a lot of crisis. Therefore, the remedy is involving private sector in a serious manner. Thank you.
Bonjour, je réponds au nom de Adam Zagalo Abdelaziz, ingénieur en génie civil et vice-président de l'association des Vidants Force du Tchad. Permettez-moi de commencer par une citation de Nelson Mandela qui disait « Pour réussir, ce n'est pas le point de départ qui compte, mais la hauteur que l'on vise. » Nous ne voulons pas venir assister à des conférences, à des forums seulement. Nous voulons des politiques fermes et continues, des actions concrètes pour sauver des milliers de vies. À l'heure où nous parlons, il y a des milliers de gens qui meurent à cause de l'assainissement. Donc, il faut sauver cette vie et je vous remercie.
Good morning. My name is Hendra Gupta. We are currently having a cooperation with the Asian Institute of Technology in Thailand to develop of Thailand. Yes, we are currently having a cooperation with the Asian Institute of Technology in Thailand to support them, to support the government of Thailand in preparing standard for testing performance of wastewater treatment for residential buildings. And this effort also has emerged in Indonesia, another country in Southeast Asia, and we try to promote all of our Southeast Asian member states, the kind of standard. I would like to respond to Dr. Kone's speech previously that we would like to link also with Africa. At some point, there will be a stage where Africa has to develop a standard for performance tests for wastewater treatment, especially for residential building. So we hope at this 3 or 4 days meeting we can have a discussion, a talk, and to link between what happened in Southeast Asia and also in Africa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the comments, the questions. We are going to really have to move right along. Minister is not yet here, but we have at least our Honorable Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, Ms. Chwete, who will then be giving us the last talk for the plenary session because we don't want to really delay tea further. It will affect all the sessions that are coming afterwards. So if you can just kindly remain seated as we welcome Deputy Minister Chwete on the floor to come and give us some remarks as the host nation of this important conference. Thank you very much.
name is Pam Chwete, the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation. I want to start by apologizing. I'm from the cabinet. I was expecting that the minister is here, but unfortunately I'm told that he's on the way. This is his speech. And I know AMCAO. I've been part of AMCAO, and I do want to greet you. Emmanuel Tony Ondio, the President, AMCAO Vice President, present here, all ministers and deputy ministers present here from Africa. I know that I learned to know people better now in Africa because I've been part of their meetings all the time. And if the minister comes in, because this is his speech, I will allow him to come and read his speech. But in the meantime, thank you very much. He is here. At least, at least you were able to know Pam Chwete. Welcome, Minister of Water and Sanitation. Thank you very much.
Sure, I'm in trouble here. I'm in deep trouble. I was happy to listen to deputy ministers. And I thought, well, oh yeah. Sure. Let me start by apologizing, Mr. President. Let me start by apologizing for the inconvenience I caused you this morning. I just arrived about an hour ago. Yesterday we worked in a deep rural area because of water. Government is constructing a dam there, so people wanted the minister to come and cut the ribbon. So yesterday I then went there, and it's a traditional community. They invited others, 3 districts involved. So water is a challenge all the time and everywhere. So I only was able to get the flight this morning, leaving Port Elizabeth at 10 to 9. So thank you very much for being patient with us, and apologize for the inconvenience once more. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Emmanuel Tony Ondo, MCAO President, MCAO Vice Presidents present here today, Your Excellencies, Ministers and Deputy Ministers present, DGs, MCAO Executive Secretary and the team, Mr. Kone, Fecal/Management Conference Chair, Mr. Des again, Naidu Des. I met him outside, and he looked very, very happy and pleased to be. He thought I wasn't going to come in so that he could read the speech on my behalf. Des, you are naughty, man. Senior officials present, representatives from all regions, international cooperating partners, all water entities present, stakeholders from the water, sanitation sectors in the region, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I greet you all and welcome you to the mother city of South Africa, one of the most beautiful cities in the world that possesses a rich and colorful history. It is my singular honor to welcome you during the month of February, during which, decades ago, the father of our nation, Nelson Mandela, walked free in the streets of the city after years of incarceration by the apartheid regime. Let me also take this opportunity to welcome you to the 5th edition of the International Fecal Sludge Management Conference. The South African government is proud that this event is being held in South Africa at a time when sanitation issues are high on the agenda of nations across the world. Important it is for us, Africans and the rest of the world, in shifting our priorities to be able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal of achieving access to adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all and end open defecation, paying special attention to the needs of women and girls and those in vulnerable situations. That is the situation I was at yesterday. These are villagers. These are people who still go out in the open field, and sometimes you read about the challenges that are faced by South Africa in terms of pollution of rivers. This is the problem. We have to deal with it, and we have to deal with it very boldly and very aggressively. Therefore, I'm pleased and privileged in being here today and knowing that the Fecal Sludge Management Conference will provide an opportunity for ourselves, researchers, innovators, municipalities, and practitioners to share and brainstorm potential solutions, to formulate policy recommendations on how to make fecal sludge management an integral part of sanitation service delivery across the region. This year's conference will be jointly held with the Africa Sun Conference, which is coordinated by the African Ministers' Council of Water, for Water, and the Africa Sun International Task Force. The joining of these conferences will offer a new impetus and create a unique opportunity and blend of practical and technical output from this Fecal Sludge Management Conference that will be coupled with the political might of Africa Sun. Worldwide, over 2 billion people do not have access to basic sanitation facilities. However, Sub-Saharan Africa is one of the regions with the lowest coverage of access to improved sanitation facilities. The region missed Millennium Development Goal number 7, to halve by 2015 the proportion of people without access to safe drinking water and basic sanitation. And only 28% of nearly 1 billion population, that is those living in this region, have access to basic sanitation facilities. Moreover, nearly 1/4 of the nearly 900 million people defecating in the open around the world live in this region. It is predicted that a fourfold increase in water supply, sanitation, and hygiene investments will be required to bring progress in line with these Sustainable Development Goals. To align to this goal, indeed, the South African government has made significant strides in delivering sanitation services to our previously unserved citizens. The percentage of households that have access to improved sanitation increased to 82% in 2017. Despite the improved access to sanitation services for the general population, there still exists challenges in delivering universal access to sanitation in South Africa. For example, mushrooming informal settlements and rural areas where conventional urbanized water and sanitation solutions cannot be used, where conventional urbanized water and sanitation solutions cannot be used. Exactly the situation I was referring to earlier, where I was yesterday. They remain major challenge hotspots in South Africa. In South Africa, when you read about the Vaal River system and the pollution which has been in the news right through the last 5 or 6 months, this is a problem. This is a problem of informal settlements that are crisscrossing these rivers, and people who do not have the necessary facilities, sanitation facilities. That is a problem that we are faced with right now in South Africa. And that is why the government, through an interministerial committee headed by the Deputy President, has taken a decision that we need a program that will be coordinated across a number of departments, not just one department, human settlements. That's basic education, human settlements, water and sanitation particularly, cooperative governance and traditional affairs. Those departments working together. Cabinet has actually established that interministerial committee chaired by the Deputy President for this purpose, trying to overcome this big challenge of sanitation, particularly in these settlements which are informal in South Africa. It is therefore essential that the country explores and adopts sanitation technologies less dependent on water to improve the number of South African households accessing decent sanitation, especially in informal and rural areas. South Africa has recently finalized a national water and sanitation master plan, taking into account the development goals and the African Union Agenda 2063 and the National Development Plan Vision 2030 of South Africa. The master plan is meant to guide, integrate, set priorities and facilitate sustainable water and sanitation throughout the water and sanitation value chain. This is a very, very exciting project. We are going to include all stakeholders here. Last week on Friday, we had a session which was preparing for this Operation Pagisa in South Africa, so that we can then, together with all the municipalities that are water services authority in South Africa, we can work together in an integrated way to try and deal with and overcome this challenge. And that same approach that I was referring to earlier on, of working together as various departments. So we have started preparations for working together through this Operation Pagisa, which will bring together all of these stakeholders for 6 weeks, come up with a program that will include the legislation that will be necessary in terms of water and sanitation. As part of the multi-stakeholder approach to accelerate sanitation provision and other basic services, an interministerial task team on basic services was established, chaired by the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Through these initiatives, skilled engineers, planners, and finance experts will be deployed to municipalities to support municipalities in the delivery of these basic services, because not all our municipalities, particularly those that are rural municipalities, not all of them have got the necessary capacity to deliver these services that we are talking about. The department has also established a National Sanitation Task Team to bring the sector together to ensure integrated planning, implementation, monitoring and evaluation, and to ensure that South Africa meets the SDG sanitation targets. The department uses the slogan, "Water is life, sanitation is dignity." While water is required for our existence, going to the toilet is a basic human need. Most of our urbanized areas have toilets that are reliant on water availability, without which they cannot function as intended. In our rural areas, water availability also determines the type of toilet facility provided. Usually, these are on-site technologies that do not require expensive sewage infrastructure to function. While they are water saving, they are not well received by our communities, and the safe disposal of the sludge that accumulates in these toilets is challenging for our municipalities to deal with, and also challenges the health of our people. For this reason, my department launched an initiative called "It's Not All About Flushing" in 2015. That is now my predecessors who were ministers before me, and we're continuing with that, with those projects that their programs they left behind, to ensure that we bring about effective and efficient alternative technology to our predominantly waterborne sanitation system. A national sanitation indaba was held by my predecessor, Minister Nomvula Mukonyano, in May 2015 to convey the message that a dignified toilet is not only to be achieved by flushing up to 12 liters of clean water. That is drinkable water. In other words, part of the challenge we're having, which is why we need this kind of conference, perhaps taking it beyond these walls here. Taking it beyond these walls to explain to our people, because today they still, if you go to where I was yesterday, the rural, deep rural areas, when you tell people that, look, we show, because we are workshopping them and showing them this is water reservoir, this is wastewater treatment works, and this is a distribution point, lines, etc. They're coming to your houses, but the water comes back to this wastewater treatment works for cleaning up so that it can go back. It's you. That's what they do. So there's a lot of education that is required, that we have to go through to make our people understand that this is what happens. So part of what we've been doing since January, since the beginning of January, 7th of January, we've been running workshops, literally workshops with rural people, trying to convince them, to make them understand that this dam we're talking about, when we talk about constructing, because we were showing them. This so we have a big challenge. So we have to do a lot of work beyond workshop. Once we have the deeper understandings here, we go out there, talk to people, translate those so that they can understand and make sense of them. In light of recent drought in South Africa, our country has experienced, there must be better and more efficient ways to re-engineer this old toilet design. There is need to develop a sanitation infrastructure that is effective and demonstrates less dependence on water while promoting its reuse. This is the point I was making here. Considering the state of the water of the wastewater treatment works and discharge of poorly treated effluent, we need to see wastewater treatment as a reliable alternative source of water, shifting the paradigm of wastewater management from treatment and disposal to reuse, recycle, and resource recovery. But this must be understood by the people themselves, beyond the technicians and the scientists. In this sense, wastewater will not be seen as a problem in need of a solution, rather as part of the solution to challenges that the country is facing today. Wastewater treatment works can be converted to resource recovery processes to produce fuels, energy, or beneficiated product. South Africa has pioneered the social franchising approach for the operation and maintenance of 300 school toilet facilities, where local people were trained to serve the school toilets in the areas where to service the school toilets in the areas where they lived in. Close to 90,000 learners benefited from this approach. 70 jobs were created and fecal waste transformed into biochar, a charcoal substitute. You know better. You know when a contribution would have been made by Desagan. You see, you know that there's going to be the jargon is going to be very challenging for people who are non-scientists like ourselves. Sometimes he wants to show politicians that we know better. Hey, Des, don't be naughty. It took me time to understand what that meant. It is crucial to create a conducive legislative and fiscal framework that would ensure political will and the introduction of a paradigm shift that challenges the old way of dealing with the sanitation challenges. My department has taken strides to amend the national sanitation policy to encourage reuse of water and beneficiation of waste streams. From the above framework, we are planning to develop a rollout model that empowers local communities both from a hygienic and technology point of view, to ensure the longevity of solutions supplied. Importantly, also, is that there is a need for partnership that straddles across the various stakeholders, like we did on Friday. We really had a number of stakeholders from various sections, and on the 10th of November, we had technologists who addressed us, and we learned a lot from them, and we're hoping that given what the program that we're embarking upon now, including the water services authorities, this is where we want them to fit in, so that we can send them to these municipalities. They can assist municipalities. So we have, in terms of the people with the technical skills and the knowledge and scientific knowledge that they have, we have Desigan leading that together with CSIR. We want them to, as we are organizing these people now, the water services authorities, because the water services authorities are there politically, but really when it comes to practical work like we're talking about here, they are lost. So on Friday and 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and 2 weeks before Friday, where we brought them together, and then we're trying to get all of us to have a common understanding, so that now the technologists, the scientists would come in and be welcomed, first of all, by these municipalities themselves, so that we can find a way of getting them to work with these municipalities. That's where we're going, and this again is coordinating that with the CSIR. With the announcement of Industrial Policy Action Plan on Water and Sanitation by the Department of Trade and Industry, the South African government identified this as an opportunity to accelerate the localization, commercialization, and large-scale manufacturing of the new sanitation technologies. The strategy is in line with our Vice President Cyril Ramaphosa's call for help construct models. Now, he's appealing to technologists and scientists now to help us construct models of new technology toilets as a core component for eradicating pit latrines in schools under the Sanitation Appropriate for Education program of the Department of Basic Education, which was initiated and launched by the President in August of 2017. Finally, let me declare this conference as officially opened, and I wish you well. I wish you all to have a pleasant stay in South Africa. South Africa is especially, you've come to a very nice place, a very laid-back place called Cape Town. I welcome you once again. I do hope we will have some time to enjoy the beautiful city of Cape Town and experience the 4 seasons in one day here. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Water and Sanitation, Minister Nkwinti. We thank you for blessing us with your presence, for sharing South Africa's experiences, challenges, and more importantly, to encourage us to continue trying to find solutions for sanitation for the continent. Before we just close for tea break, I would like us to please just have a round of applause for our speakers, whom I think did a very good job. For our beautiful dancers behind the stage. And of course, to myself, I think, thank you. And then how we're gonna roll from here is we will break for 15 minutes exactly, then we will reconvene into our parallel sessions after 15 minutes. The parallel sessions were supposed to be for 90 minutes. We have cut them down to 60 minutes, which is an hour. So please, the moderators, make sure that you try to manage your time. We now have an hour only for the parallel session, but the break from now, 15 minutes, then we go back to the parallel session. Thank you very much.